Quiet on set. I'm just kidding. All right, you ready? Hi, Hwvar Groovy.
Hi, Laura.
Tell me a fun fact about yourself.
I speak Elvish.
What is Elvish? What is that?
So it's the language in Lord of the Rings.
Can you speak in Elvish then, right now?
Mae governanten, Petil ed Helen. My name is Hwvar AKA. I am from Kurdistan, and Kurdistan is an area of the world that is split between 4 countries. They're Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. It was when Saddam Hussein was a dictator in Iraq, and he was systematically wiping out people just because they were Kurdish. There was a genocide happening and it involved chemical weapons, chemical bombs, just shooting people on the street, torture, and my dad was part of the uprising that was against Saddam. It started off with him writing articles and songs to kind of put hope into people, and eventually grew into a huge uprising where he was then captured. He was captured as soon as I was born, actually. They took him away at gunpoint. My mum always tells me that my first word was at gunpoint, and it was my dad's name as they were taking him away. So they took him away for about 2 years, and they tortured him, they hurt him, they psychologically tortured him, but I don't know how, but by the grace of God, he was one of the few that were able to escape that prison. And he came home and he knocked on the door one night and said, "We got to go." And we left because there was nothing else to do. We had to leave, yeah. When we first had to flee, I was about 4 years old. We spent a few weeks trekking through mountains and getting help from secret guerrilla forces to try and cross the border. There's actually one awesome story where my mum had to dress up as a man to cross into the Iran border. I remember having a giant bazooka as a pillow. I slept on that because my dad used it to protect us. I was a refugee child for about 2 years, so I had to travel to Iran from Iraq, and we lived in a tent in a UNHCR camp. I was about 7 when we got to Australia. We actually got to fly here because Australia recognised what my dad had done and who was after him, so we got political asylum. So we were very, very lucky. And that's something I actually struggle with a lot because I know a lot of the people that were with us in the refugee camp didn't make it, actually didn't survive. We landed in Australia and everything was just so quiet and peaceful. And I think we all kind of just breathed a sigh of relief. I really sensed that from my parents. It was like they could finally just put down their guards and just breathe for a second. They had made it. They had brought us to safety. My mum had given birth to this little boy in a refugee camp, and finally she was here and she knew we were safe. And I think that was the first time they could just relax for a little bit. The first time I actually realised that some people don't look at me like I belong was when I was young, and I was quite bright in school, and a teacher came up to me and said, you could be Prime Minister if you wanted to. And some of the kids started laughing and saying, you have to be Australian to be a Prime Minister. And that was the first time I realised that some people don't think I'm an Australian, and it was just such a shock for me because I was Australian. I lived here, this was my home. And when they said that, I remember going home and I cried, and I tried to figure out how I could be Australian and if there was anything I can do to look different, speak differently, be different. I would lie about my background. No, I didn't speak about being a refugee until I became a Christian, and I had that courage to talk about that. Before that, I'd tell people I was born in Australia. Even all the way up into high school, I would lie and I would say my parents have been in Australia for a long time. I was born here, just to try and fit in a little bit more. When I was even younger than that, I used to scrub my skin so hard till it bled because I wanted to be light skin like all the other girls. I hated my nose because they would tease me about how big my nose was. So I would pray so hard, I'd close my eyes and I'd be like, God, 1, 2, 3, my nose is going to be small. And of course I was disappointed each time. So a lot of it had to do with appearance. Even the way I spoke, I would try to mimic what people said on TV, try and have a more an Australian accent. A place I used to work at about 4 months ago, a manager actually told me that I should go back to Saudi Arabia. I'm not from Saudi Arabia, but that I don't belong here. I'm what's wrong with this country. And it was very unprovoked. I had just shown up, and then they decided it'd be funny to play some Nazi songs over the speaker system as we were setting up. And I think that just really shocked me, because you just hope that in this day and age, like, people wouldn't be that cruel.
Yeah.
The people that experience it often are told just to brush it off, or it's just a joke. But after a while, it's not very funny, because it actually speaks to the fears that, you know, people of colour like me actually have, because we are very aware that we are different. No one wants to be an asylum seeker, believe me. Like, no one wants to go to a nation where they actually know that they're going to be ridiculed and unwelcome. But sometimes those cruel comments are actually better than being killed or seeing your family murdered. I remember one time I was talking to somebody who said something that wasn't very nice, and I had a young RDG girl with me, and she just automatically spoke up and said, "That's not very nice. You know, you shouldn't call people seeking asylum that term." And just the little things like that, like changing the rhetoric, changing the language surrounding when you're talking about people like that, I think is so important. So there's so many things young girls can do, and, you know, I think the best thing people can do is educate themselves about the issue, because there's so many misconceptions from a lot of sides. It's not just one side. Like, a lot of people are throwing figures and terms and these scary notions out there which scare people. And it doesn't come from a place of hatred. A lot of the times when people are scared, it's just they don't know. So teaching yourself and educating yourself so that you can go tell people, actually, like, these are just human beings. They have a right to do this. This is actually the figures. They actually give a lot back to our community. They don't just take money from the government. I think is really important. Heaven, I think, is the most stunning, diverse party ever. I think heaven looks like what earth was supposed to look like before sin. I think heaven doesn't look at people's differences at all. I think heaven celebrates every human being as a child of God. There are so many different cultures and traditions and practices, just so many to even think about or count. And each of them reflects, I think, God, because everyone is made in the image of God, and each of them have something to bring to the table, and each of them brings something beautiful to humanity. And I think all of them need to be celebrated. And, you know, in the ideal world, it'll look like heaven, but we can take steps today, I guess, to really be inclusive of everyone, so that maybe it can look a little bit more like heaven until we all get there.
All right, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yay, Hwvar.
Thank you. It was so awkward.
What
I
do you
didn't realize
mean?
how awkward it is.
Yeah, but it
Because,
would be awkward when they edit it together. They make us look freaking awesome.
Would love a teleprompter.
Oh, yeah. I came from Kurdistan when I was 2.
Yeah.
Wait, can you just go back up?
Yeah.